Hello and welcome to episode 4 of my Gifu holiday mini-series thing. This is probably going to be the last episode, so I hope you enjoy it. What was I talking about last time? That was it. Going to that retro museum, that was really good. Anyway, the next thing we did was we went to... I don't know I can't remember what it was called for a start. So it was the something village, I think, or historical village or something like that. So I don't know what it was called, but I also don't know what it was. Like, what would you call this kind of place? I guess it was like a museum, I think, like an open air museum. That's what I'd call it. So it was this. I don't know. I guess it sort of looked like a park, right? So you went in, and then you had like this big lake in the middle of it. And what they'd done at this particular sort of like museum was they'd taken these houses, like these actual real houses or real buildings that used to exist somewhere in the city, and they'd taken them down and they'd rebuilt them again. Because they were, getting old and they needed looking after and they needed maintenance. So they created this sort of like little village filled with these like old-fashioned like Japanese-style buildings. And I really like things like that. One, because it's nice to have this sort of like park-type place to walk around, lots of grass, like this big lake that, like I mentioned, with like all these fish in and stuff like that. And two, because I really like old Japanese buildings. And I think what I like about them particularly is the way that they just use natural materials. So in the same way that I'd like a sort of like a log cabin type thing, because it uses so much wood, natural materials, and like stone for like a fireplace. I like these sort of traditional Japanese style buildings in the same way. And what I like to do when I go into them, because you could go into all of these, you could enter. You have to take your shoes off most of the time when you go in, but you could have a look around. You could go into all the different rooms. There wasn't really anything in them. Like most of the rooms were sort of empty, like maybe one or two bits of furniture, but they're mostly empty. But you could go. Sometimes you could go like upstairs, and you could have a look at the way it was built. You could see all of the beams of wood, all the logs that were put together, and how these massive, huge tree trunks that were put together to build this roof, or see all the straw. So you had like straw roofs, sort of similar to like English cottages that have like a straw roof. That was really interesting. I liked spending some time walking around there and then just looking at all the different buildings. That was nice. I think there's some information to read. Yeah, most of the buildings had some like information to read, like a bit of history about what the building was used for, like maybe where it came from, what the different parts of it were called, and all stuff like that. And yeah, it was nice. But I think I was quite surprised by how dark it was inside most of these buildings, because maybe it's just me, but when I think of like traditional like Japanese style buildings, I always think of them being quite bright inside. Because they've got like so many windows and doors you can open to let a lot of light in. But I suppose the ones that we went round, they didn't, like some of the doors were closed and the windows were closed, so that made it dark. But yeah, I don't know. It did feel quite dark inside, and it was cold. Well, it wasn't cold, the weather wasn't cold, but I mean, like, it was drafty, like the wind would definitely blow in this, and like I can imagine it would get really cold in wintertime, this style of building. And what else? Oh yes, that was it. The smell inside, very smoky, because lots of these buildings, I think all of these buildings, at some point would have had like a fireplace inside them, sort of like in the middle of the building almost, like a pit where the fire would be. And the whole thing would just be very smoky, and the smoke smell sort of like stains the wood, like stays in the wood. So you go into these places and you smell this like old sort of smoky smell, which is sort of nice. But then again, I don't know if I'd want to live in one of those style buildings today. Not quite like that anyway. Maybe a bit more modern. I would quite like to live in like an old Japanese style house, but yeah, a little bit more modern than that. But I do like the idea of living somewhere like a bit more like naturey, a bit more greenery around me. And I'd like one of those houses where you can sort of like slide. It's got like straw mats everywhere, like tatami mats everywhere, and you can like slide the windows open in the morning, and you like look out onto like some fancy like a garden, not huge, but like a landscaped garden with like some little pond in there or something. That sounds nice. It will probably never happen, but yeah, something about that attracts me. I'm attracted to that sort of like natural style building, and like a more simpler way of life, I guess, which is weird actually, because I'm a programmer, I'm a software engineer, so my job is linked to technology. I can't escape technology, but I don't know. As I'm getting older, I find myself wanting to escape a bit more from it all. But anyway, that is not the purpose of this episode. So I'll bring my topic back onto the holiday. So after we'd finished walking around this village, actually just before I move on to the next thing, I would like to say that in England, in Birmingham or close to Birmingham, there's a similar sort of museum where you can find like an entire street and loads of buildings that have been taken down from somewhere and then like rebuilt at this site, and they've got like an entire pub with real, you can go and buy some real beer from there and all kinds of things, fish and chip shop and all stuff, like this whole street. And it's called the Black Country Living Museum, and I've been to that quite a few times, and it's very good. So I don't know if you're near Birmingham or you happen to find yourself near Birmingham someday. It might be worth checking that out if you want to see like a sort of open air museum full of lots of like old English houses, I guess, and buildings, and like learn a bit about how people used to live in England years ago. You might enjoy that. Right, after leaving this sort of like Japanese style village museum thing, we ended up going to a different place about an hour's drive away, and that was to visit a relative and also to visit the place where my mother-in-law had grown up as a child. So I'd heard her talk about this place quite a few times, but I didn't know what it looked like or anything like that. So it was good to be able to see this place. I would describe it as like quite a quiet village, but very pretty. There's a really nice river that flows all the way through this village, and it's the color of the water is like a sort of like grayish blue color. It's quite unusual. I mean, you don't usually see that color in England, but it's quite common seeing that kind of color over here in Japan, and it's something to do with like lots of chemicals, lots of minerals inside the water, giving it that unusual color. But it looks very pretty, and there's this nice bridge that had been painted bright red going over this sort of like blue coloured water, and these rocks all around, and these nice sort of like tall pine trees everywhere, and then mountains all the way around, absolutely all the way around. It was just nestled in between these mountains. Nestled is a good word. I don't actually know how to explain it. I think it means like fit tightly in between something. So nestled between mountains. But very, very picturesque. I mean, and fresh. The temperature had dropped, like I'd explained before, so the air felt a bit more fresher. But I think the air smelt a bit more fresher as well. It's just more in the countryside. So that was really nice. And I was looking out of a window in the morning, thinking, yeah, I'd probably prefer living somewhere like here than the place I'm actually living now, because I really like nature, and it looked like there's some places you can go to walk. And I was looking at these mountains thinking, like, I wonder how you get up those mountains. And I was asking about them. It turns out I don't think you can go up the mountains. because you might see a bear, because you might see a wild boar, so they're dangerous. And then like actually climbing the mountain is not easy at all, because although it doesn't. I mean, when you're looking at it, it looks quite flat-ish and tall, but I think if you go to the bottom of it and you look up, you can see it is really steep, and it's covered in trees. So it sort of looks like maybe you could just like walk and then like, I don't know, like stand behind a tree and then like, you know, climb a bit and stand behind the next tree and climb a bit and stand behind the next tree. And maybe you could, but it's not easy. You know, it's not something you can just walk up, which is a shame because it looked like I can imagine the view from the top of these mountains would be amazing. So I don't know. Maybe even if I lived there, maybe I couldn't go for like more walks around nature and stuff like that. It's just too difficult to climb up. But one thing I did find like really interesting about this place is I'm pretty sure there was like one way in and one way out. As it is in sort of like one road that goes in and out, because you've got mountains on each side. So maybe you can go sort of like, maybe you can go north and maybe you can go south, but maybe you can't go east or west because you just hit mountains. And unless someone's like made a tunnel, you just can't go through them. You know, you can't drive your car over the mountain. So it was just like this. It was weird. I thought, I've never been anywhere like this before, where you can only go this way, or you can go or that way, but you can't go across at all. I think the closest thing to like somewhere like that is like when I go to the ocean, and I'm thinking like I've reached like the end of the land. You know, like you can't go any further. This is it. This is the edge of the land. So it felt a bit like that, but obviously it was the mountain stopping me from going in certain directions. Anyway, that was it for this little like mini series thing. It's I had a really good time. It was a really nice place. I got to see a lot more nature, and yeah, just a really good experience and an amazing hotel room. I'll remember that, I think, forever. So yeah, hope you've enjoyed listening to my tales about it. Until next time, bye bye.